Hello world, in this video tutorial we will create a website with a simulation of purchasing bicycles in a shopping cart. And so in the original plan of this tutorial I didn't have a purchases table, so you'll hear me mention that at the beginning of the video that we're just going to have a shopping cart, but at the end of the video I decided, of course, we need the ability to make a purchase. So I hope you enjoy this shopping cart tutorial with purchases in a database. Hello world, in today's tutorial we are going to build a shopping cart for our bicycle shop. So what I have here is a finished product, and just to demonstrate it quickly, we have some bicycles that are being pulled from our .NET database. And so it's just a handful of bikes, and you can go to the details of a bike and add it to a cart, kind of give it a little message here, and then go to another, add it to a cart. And so just getting it to this point where we have a shopping cart full of items and subtotals and total dollar amount is going to be kind of what we're building today. Now, the learning objectives, what we're going to learn if you stick through this video in this .NET world, there's some pretty important topics, which is the first of how to use a view model. And so we're using this model view controller, this MVC pattern, and I just found this first term very interesting as we learn these different components. What is a model? What is a view? And what is a controller? You get past that learning curve, and then all of a sudden we have this new thing. What is a view model? And so it's like they're throwing these two pieces of it at us together. Anyways, I'm going to uncover that. What is a view model? And then how can it be beneficial to us? And we're going to obviously bring that into code. The next thing we're going to cover, which is another ginormous topic, very important, is maintaining session data. And so maintaining state, if you will, maintaining your data. We're going to do that, and there's a lot of ways of maintaining data. Of course, we're going to cover many ways in the class, but we're going to look at one particular way of maintaining session data on the server. And so remembering information about a user across multiple page requests, that actually is how we can hit these different pages. And as I add these to the cart, it basically remembers what you did prior, what items you added to the cart prior. You can add another cart here, and obviously seeing quantity of two. Basically remembering information about the user as they traverse the website by maintaining session data. And so that's a really important concept. So these are already two very big important topics. And then the third one here, I personally, like this one a lot as well, because it says develop web apps that use I'll spell this out, post redirect get pattern. So we'll just say pattern. And so what is post redirect get, or PRG? This is the idea when you have a shopping cart, and we've all been there before, and you click on purchase, and then it just kind of spins, and you don't know if your purchase went through or if it didn't go through, if your card got charged, did not get charged, and it not letting you submit that shopping cart twice kind of thing. So that to charge the credit card twice if the user stops the page before the server gets a fully chance to respond. So this pattern will help us in those scenarios prevent the end user from trying to submit their order twice, kind of thing. And additionally, we're going to use this temp data property to transfer data from controller to controller. And so we've used things like ViewBag and ViewData. And ViewBag and ViewData, if you stop and think about it, what it did is it took information, it took data from the controller to the view. So it's sending data from the controller to the view. Temp data is another property where we can actually transfer data from controller to controller. So there's a lot in this to learn and to build out. And so this is what we're going to build, and let's get started. So the starting point for this project is here I'm going to keep this URL, keep this solution as is. I'm not making any more changes to my bicycle shop MVC. And so this is something that I've kind of coded in the last couple of weeks and just made a couple of changes here recently to prepare it for this. Now, I would recommend going through the first tutorial where I created this bicycle shop. So I'm pretty sure I've recently started learning how the fanciness of YouTube of, you know, cards. And so I'll go ahead and put a card at this point to the video. And so if you haven't done that, I would recommend doing that. What we do in that first tutorial series is we create an admin area, which is a separate area of our bicycle shop where you can add new bikes and edit bikes and delete bikes, right? Whereas a main site, we just have bicycles that users can add to a cart. So there's kind of two sections here. And of course, you could start just by cloning this repository, but I would recommend, you know, kind of understanding the code that's underneath and the starting point from starting that first video. However, if you just want to learn about the shopping cart and the topics of this video, you can start with cloning this repository. So I'm going to do that, and I'll go ahead and use GitHub Desktop. Of course, you'll need GitHub Desktop, which is a software application, and of course, you'll need Git to clone this repository. So I will start just by cloning this repository. So I open up GitHub Desktop, and I'm going to click on File, Clone Repository. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the URL, the web URL for this repo. Again, you can just navigate to this link, github.com, my name, Bicycle Shop MVC. This will be here. It's a public repo and you can clone it. And then you click on this code button, copy the URL, and then you can go back into GitHub Desktop and clone it. GitHub Desktop, there it is. I'll click on File, Clone Repository, click on URL, paste, and where's it going to be? On my local path. So you get to define that. You'll notice this is on my desktop, AWD repos. I'm gonna choose a different folder here. You could just put this on your desktop if you like. So I'm just going to choose my desktop to keep it nice and clean, and let's click on clone. Okay, so now that that's on my desktop, I'm going to be able to close. Well, let's just minimize since it's doing an update, and I'm going to close GitHub, and I'll close my finished product. And here is my MVC site, and I'm just going to open up the solution. So you just double click the folder, double click the solution, and bring this over. Now, I'm going to recommend that even if you did the first tutorial and you started with the seed data from the first tutorial, that you go ahead and drop that database. So if you did the first tutorial, let's just drop that database. I called it Bicycle Shop. If you didn't do the first tutorial, you do not need to do this step. I'm just going to delete that bike shop. And then I'm going to run a command to update my database. So let me go to my package manager console, and I'm going to type in the command update database. That will recreate my database with the seed data that I've provided, basically 5 bicycles. And there should be images in my www root images. So I've got 5 bicycles, I've got 5 bicycle images. And if I boot this up, you can see there's no shopping cart, and this is our starting point. We do have an admin area, and we have bicycles. Looks like I have 10 bikes. Of course, I don't need 10. I have images for the first 5. That's why. After that, I stopped downloading and putting images in that folder, but nonetheless, this will work. And so you can filter here, and we've got the admin area to add, but that's not what we're focusing on. We are focusing on creating a shopping cart, which really brings us to our first learning objective and start to bring in this concept of a view model. And so again, I found this kind of confusing when I was kind of newer to MVC pattern. It's like you learn these individual components and all of a sudden we got this new thing called a view model. So let me explain what a view model is and how it's useful. And so if we go into our models right now, we really just have one model, which is a bicycle. So let me go ahead and minimize these extra windows and take a look at our one class, which is a bicycle. And so the way that we've used this model so far is that we did entity framework code first. And so by creating this model with C#, we were able to basically link this model into a table in our database. And so that was done with, again, this tool called Entity Framework, which was, an ORM is what it's called, and it's used to map classes in C# to tables in SQL databases. And so that's what a model is. And then, that's just the model. And so if I were to go into my database, which we called Bicycle Shop, I'm probably going to need to refresh this. And there's my bike shop. You can see that there's a bicycles table that was created out of this bicycle class. And so you can kind of see all the columns come from our properties in C#. However, if I were to go to a details view, essentially what we're doing is we're looking at that particular row for that bike in this bike detail. And if I go to here, this is many rows out of that table. And so right now our views, our front end is basically pulling the data right out of the table and putting it right onto the page. And so, however, in SQL Server, many times there's more than one table, and what you want to show on a page, the data comes from more than one place. In other words, more than one database table. And so, in SQL Server, we're working with normalized databases. Normalized databases have many tables that are linked together through their keys. And again, right now in our views, we're just displaying one table at a time. And so if we wanted to display data in multiple tables, our solution, at least so far in this class, was to use ViewBag. And ViewBag was a way to, in addition to a model, we could say, let's pull a bunch of bicycles from the bicycle table, but maybe let's pull the categories, for example, from another table and put it into ViewBag. And so right now, if we want to display data from multiple tables, we're displaying some from a model, and we're displaying some and we're putting it into ViewBag. Well, the problem that kind of creeps up when you're putting data into ViewBag is you wind up getting these runtime errors. Obviously, when the application is running and you hit a runtime error, you could potentially crash your application. And so it's a little risky in the sense to put all this information in ViewBag because you end up with runtime errors. Okay, the benefit of creating what's called a view model is instead of pulling some data out of your models and putting other data into ViewBag, we're going to create another class And this class is going to essentially do a SQL join. It's going to join different data together from different tables, from different areas. You know, it might be from a table. It might be, you know, you might have a piece of data that's a calculation based on some, you know, some numbers in the database plus a little bit of math. Point is, we're going to end up with this new C# class that can not necessarily just be information out of one table, but be information out of multiple tables, and then you can or custom calculations, and then you send that to the view. So this is a model specifically for the front end. We're building this for the front end, and it offers one advantage over the way that we've done it so far, which is using ViewBag. And that one advantage is to get compile time errors as opposed to runtime errors. And so when you're using a view model, you're going to get compile time errors, and any errors that you hit are going to be hit at the compiler as opposed to runtime, which is a benefit, right? Because if you hit runtime errors, there's a chance that you find them and that you are able to debug them. But there's also a chance in runtime errors, if you're going to get a runtime error, that you don't find that runtime error. The big benefit of getting compile time errors is that you're guaranteed to find your errors if your software won't compile, right? So there's a big advantage of compile time errors over runtime errors. Therefore, there's an advantage of view models over using just regular models where you're saving those models to the database and a tool like ViewBag. Again, they both work. Using ViewBag and models, that's a solution that works, but you get runtime errors, whereas if you use view models, it's compile time errors. Okay, so that's the first objective, and that's kind of the benefit of using what's called a view model. Let's start coding. Now, in here, in our models, I'm going to add a class. And the first class that I'm going to create is a shopping cart item. We're going to have to create a shopping cart item and essentially a shopping cart itself. And so, shopping cart item. This is a C# class. Now, this is not a view model. This is just another class, and you could save shopping cart items into the database. And so that will be the next little iteration of what we do here is we're going to actually click a buy button and be able to save these shopping cart items. Well, a shopping cart item is just an ID, so I'll make an ID here for the unique primary key identifier, and I will save a bicycle as well. So a shopping cart item is going to be its own unique identifier. It is going to be a bicycle and a quantity of bikes. So I'll say quantity. Okay, so this is a single shopping cart item, right? It will include one of our bicycles or many of our bicycles, if we could say 5 shopping cart items. And so this is a simple C# class to kind of get us started. Now let's create our shopping cart view model. Again, this is going to be new for us. So let's go ahead in our models, add a class. So when I think of this, again, I'm just trying to re-explain what I think I've tried to explain. You know, this is going to be data that is going to be sent forward to a view. That's the, you know, the data is the model and the view is for displaying the data. But it's not necessarily data that's stored just in one place. We might have to compile this data from different places for use in one view. Okay, so one view is going to be our shopping cart page, and this is going to be data that we're compiling from multiple places, be it a database or a calculation, for display in that page. So I hope I described a view model for you. Now, our shopping cart will have a list of shopping cart items. And we can call it cart items and get and set. So you can have many cart items, and that's what this is. This is a one-to-many relationship. Our shopping cart view model can have many cart items. We're going to have a total price, public decimal, which is nullable, called total price. And we'll do a total quantity. Okay, so two new classes, one for an individual item, and then we have a list of items, a total price, and a total quantity. You know, if you've got 5 bikes or 4 bikes or whatever, oftentimes, you know, you see that little indicator. I'm thinking of Amazon.com. When I add 15 items to my cart, I see the total quantity in a little shopping cart icon on the page. And so you might want that total quantity. Okay, now to begin to implement this, let's go ahead and just rerun the current build and think about the workflow. So as I list my bicycles and I click on details, I have this add to cart button, and that's kind of the feature that I need to build out. I need to build out, and my problem is I'm running two at once. Let me close down my other one. Let me close this down. 'Cause I don't think my current build was at that point. Let me try this again. Yeah, there we go. It was running my finished solution. So notice right now, if I go to details, I don't have an add to cart button. And so that's kind of the next step, is when we're listing a bicycle, we need a button to add to the cart. So that's not too hard to code a button. Let's go then to our view. Bicycle details is where we're going to code this. And let's kind of inspect what we got going on here. So each bike is being put into a bootstrap card, and you can see a bunch of list items with the information. And so we're going to put our button inside of this card, and that button will kind of get us going in the right direction. And so we're going to add an LI here. Finally, the coding. LI, class, list, group, item. We're going to have an anchor tag, ASP controller. Now we need to make a shopping cart controller. So right now we don't have this shopping cart controller. Let's go ahead and close our anchor tag. And in that shopping cart, we're going to have an ASP action to add to cart. So this is our method. And we're going to provide a route ID, ASP route ID of the model.id. So this is the bicycle ID that needs to be sent to the add to cart as well. And our anchor tag will, I'm going to style it as a button, class of BTN primary. And it will say add to cart. This is the text on the anchor tag. Now, in order for your view to send the model ID to another ASP action, we have to make sure that we're storing the ID somewhere on this page. Right now, you can see this view does not store the model ID anywhere on here. So one little thing I'm going to do is kind of up at the top, I'm going to add a hidden control to store input type of hidden, and the value is the model ID. Otherwise, this view would not be able to send that bicycle's ID into another controller. And so now we need to actually go ahead and create this shopping cart controller. So let's go ahead and under our solution, I can start closing some of these things here. And under controllers, I'm going to add a controller. We're going to call it shopping cart controller. And we need to make our method, which was add to cart. So public iActionResult, add to cart. Now I'm just going to put a breakpoint in here, and once I click the button, I'm going to make sure that that button goes to this method and that this method receives the ID of the bicycle. So we go bicycles, details. We could see this is ID of 1 up in the URL, but if I click here, add to cart, you can notice it's spinning because it did hit my breakpoint and I do receive an ID of 1. So that's an important step to make sure that your method is receiving that ID. And here I'm going to start bringing in my entity framework context. And so I'm going to make a private, we can call it a read-only, shop context called underscore context. And then in a constructor, I need to public shopping cart controller. So this is my constructor for my controller. We need to initialize our underscore context field. Okay, so this is going to allow me to hit the database, right? This is what this context is going to do, is it's going to allow me to run a query. By the way, we can change this to a view result. If we do return, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it iActionResult. I need to explain the differences there. If we do return to a view, we could change that to a view result, but I just glanced and I do something different here. Okay, and so now in the shopping cart controller, what I want to do is I want to say var bicycle to add, and we are going to basically hit our database and look up that bicycle by ID. And so we're going to add this to our cart. That's why we're calling it bicycle to add. We're going to add that to a cart. And I need to basically create my cart. So additionally, another field I'm going to create here, private read only, a list of shopping cart items called cart items underscore cart items. And we can initialize our list in our constructor. So underscore cart items is a new list of shopping cart item. Okay, by marking the field as read only means you can only put data into it during a constructor call. So that's the only time you can assign these field variables is during that constructor. Okay, so now that we have a bicycle to add and we have a list of cart items, we need to determine if this bicycle has been added before, because of course then we're just going to, add to the quantity that already exists. Otherwise, we set the quantity to 1. So we're either adding 1 or we're setting a quantity of 1. And so we can write a little link query here to determine if the existing cart item underscore cart items is what we're going to query. First or default item. Okay, so again, we're just looking for an item by the item dot bicycle ID, and we're seeing if it equals the ID that was passed in. So this is going to basically return an item or not. Again, this is just a link query looking for an item, the first one that it finds, by the bicycle ID. And so now we have this variable that we can test. We could say if existing cart item is not null, then we increase the quantity. Otherwise, we add a shopping cart item to our list and set the quantity of 1. Okay, so this looks pretty good here, this autofill from Copilot. And here it's saying it might be null, which I'm going to ignore for now, I think, because we already demonstrated we're passing the ID in okay. We could do a little if statement if it's not null to fix that. And the next thing, I'm trying to think of the direction I want to take this. Okay, so we've added, at this point, we've added the bicycle to a shopping cart. And then what do we want to do? Well, we want the user to view their shopping cart, right? Once you add an item to their shopping cart, we want to view the cart. And so for now, I will just return and redirect to action is the right method, but I'm going to write a method called view cart that will be another method. So we're not returning to view here. Okay, so we need to write a method, take the breakpoint out, called view cart. And this is an HTTP post, and view cart is an HTTP get. Okay, now I want to show a problem with this sequence of events so that we can implement a solution to that problem. Now, if I put a breakpoint here on my view cart method, that means that I've successfully, actually let's just step through. Let's just step through from the top. Here's my page, bicycles, details, add to cart. I put a post on that and now that's crashing it. I'm gonna take that post off because it's actually a get. That's why. It's because it's an anchor tag. I was thinking add to cart was a posting of a form, but it's not. So that was my mistake. So let's click details, click add to cart. Okay, so the ID is coming in. Let's kind of step over that. Now our bicycle to add is coming out of the database, so we've got the right information. It should be null, so we should hit the else block. We should add a new shopping cart item with our bicycle to add to our underscore cart items. Okay, so I want to examine, so notice in my breakpoints, I'm going to examine underscore cart items. And you can see cart items has a count of 1. Okay, now if I'm going to hit step into, and it's going to take me to my view cart. And I should be able to step over, step out. Okay, and it says return to view cart was not found. Okay, it was looking, I'm sorry, it was looking for obviously a view. Did I return to action? Did I code the right thing? Return, redirect to action of view cart. So that should take me to view cart. 1 second. Okay, that error message is telling me I need a view cart view, and so I'm going to create that, and that'll be the next step. So under my views, I now have a shopping cart controller, so I need a shopping cart folder here. So I'm going to add a folder, shopping cart. And I'm going to make a view under here called view cart CSHTML. Now my model is going to be a shopping cart view model. And let's just H1, call this my shopping cart. Okay. And escape here. Okay, and so I need to get this where the shopping cart controller is sending my view cart a shopping cart view model. Okay, that is a mouthful. So I'm going to take this HTTP GET off of this as well. That might be part of my problem. That might have been my problem. Let's hit this one more time. And ultimately, this view cart needs to send a view model to that view. And so that's kind of the problem that I'm having. But this line right here should send me to this action right here is the problem that I'm having. And I think that might have solved it. So let's check this out one more time. I think that might have solved it. Let's hit bicycles, details, add to cart, spinning, hop over, add to a cart item, and let me troubleshoot a little more while I pause. I'm going to code out this method just a little bit more to send the view cart a view model. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say var cart view model equals new. If you're following along, go ahead and code this. New shopping cart model. Cart items is underscore cart items. Total price is a sum of the item price times the item quantity. And this is actually saved in total price. And then to the view, we are sending a cart view model. All right, just had a little bit of troubleshooting there off camera, but let me summarize what's going on, and get back to the original problem. So you could see the cart items is working. I'm going to put multiple breakpoints in here. So I'm going to have a breakpoint here, and I'm going to have a breakpoint on my cart view model. And so if I run this now, and this is in a working state, so at least working to where I want it, we can hit bicycles and hit details, add to cart, and you can see here it goes through and adds a cart and creates underscore cart items. Now, to point out that cart items count as 1, that is correct. We just added that cart item, and if I hit continue, that's going to allow me to hit my next breakpoint. And notice what happens in between page requests. Now, underscore cart items is lost. And again, that just goes back to HTTP is stateless. And, you know, we're doing multiple client server requests and response back and forth here. And so this redirect to action hits view cart, but you notice that the field, which is my shopping cart, you know, my underscore cart items, you know, the data is lost in between these requests, in between these client server requests. And so you could see here that if I load up my cart items, well, with underscore cart items, there's nothing there. And so now I am hitting my shopping cart view. Notice I'm hitting a view cart. I am sending my view model to my shopping cart view. So I'm hitting this H1, but my shopping cart is empty. And so now that I've got this wired up, let's go ahead and stop the breakpoints. That brings me back to my next bullet point here of maintaining session data on the server using HTTP context. And so again, you just saw the example of kind of losing data in between client server requests. And so we're going to use this HTTP context to save our cart for the client. And so back up here, I'm going to write a line of code and then I'll begin to explain it. So again, what we're doing here is we're saving to a session on the server. And so this is on your server's RAM. And so there's different ways to maintain this state. We're going to learn different ways. But when you use HTTP context, session, now we're probably going to have to import this up at the top. So notice we're getting a red squiggly here. Session dot set capital S. We'll set the cart variable to cart items. Now I'm going to create which this would work for the time being, but fumbling here a little bit over my words. So I got to get this session object recognized, and then I need to write a little bit of code for it. And so let me look at my using statements. And so up top, using Microsoft ASP.NET Core HTTP. Okay, now the reason why session is not recognized is you actually have to enable this in your middleware for your program. And so To do that, we're going to stop this thing from running. Anytime you're adding middleware, you got to close it down completely. And I'm going to open up Program CS. And underneath Builder, again, this is going to enable session variables on the server. We're going to do Builder Services Add Memory Cache and Builder Services Add Session. And so these were the two lines of middleware methods that you need to run to be able to create server-side sessions to store state in. If I go back to view cart, or my cart controller, let me, no. Keep looking, because I know there's a few steps. There it was. So under builder.build, var app is builder.build. We are going to add app.use session. So a few steps there to remember to enable sessions on the server. Let's see if that cleans it, or if there's another one. Still more. Last but not least, you have to type the right object name. This is HTTP context. So if viewers at home were probably yelling out of your seat that you're not typing the right object name. So there we go. Nonetheless, these steps were necessary to enable. So I'm glad that I had that error and type it correct. Now, this line requires, okay, so when you have session variables on the server, you could store integers, you could store doubles, you could store floats, or you can store objects. And so there's a lot of different things you could store in these session variables. And this is barking at me here because it doesn't know how to save cart items into a cart. And so we have to write what's called an extension method that allows us to basically create this set method to accept objects. And so this is part of just what I would call the legwork of being able to store objects into your session. And our objects are currently cart items. And so let me close all tabs. And we're going to create, again, a C# extension method. An extension method is a pretty cool concept where you have these classes in C# and you can add a method to a class with an extension method. And so in my models, I'm going to create a class called session extensions.cs. And this is going to allow us to save objects, and these are using generics, and I'm just going to paste this in and go over these methods because they're a little complex. Let me zoom out just a little bit here. You could see here public static. You add the keyword static, and that's what makes this by adding the keyword static, there's a class called session extensions that we're adding these methods to it. So this is the convention for adding a method to a class called session extensions. Ultimately here we're writing a method called set, and set can take in any type of whatever type you give it. And you can see here there's a key, which is the name of the variable, and a value. And so this just says, hey, whatever value type you send in, we're going to take the key, again, the variable name, and serialize that object into JSON. So whatever the object is that's passed in, the C# object, we serialize it on the back end and store it in a key. And of course, that's when you're putting data into the session, and when you're putting data out, it's basically the same thing. We are reading the key out using this get method, again, generic type T, and returning that object deserialized. And so I think of a serialize as an encryption, if you will, or converting this object into JSON, and a deserialize is taking it out of JSON back into an object and returning that object. So these couple methods are written in such a generic way that you really just can write them once and then use the set and get method to put objects into memory and back out. So let's go back into our shopping cart controller. And now our session.set isn't upset that we're passing it a list of items because it knows how to receive a list of items. But you did notice this is using the set method, so that's putting the data in. I'm also going to check to see up at the top of my method. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to write a little ternary thing here. I'm going to say, hey, are there cart items? Actually, I'm going to set my cart items here. Well, I made it read only, didn't I? Yeah. If I get rid of that read only, okay, let's make sure that this is looking good. I gotta clean that up. Let's delete those. Okay. Here, I'm reassigning my cart items. I'm reading my cart items out of session. But if that returns null, which is what those double question marks mean, then create a new list of shopping cart items. Do I want this? So here, let's read the shopping cart out of session. Otherwise, if it's not in session, generate an empty list. I don't want to do that. I'm going to do cart items here. So I'm going to create a different variable called cart items without the underscore that's different than my field. So the underscore is my field that belongs in the scope is different than the scope of this variable that's in the method. So cart items with an underscore is different than underscore cart items, which has a different scope of my controller. And so here's cart items. And now I'm just going to change that to cart items.add and set my cart items here. And okay. So that kind of is for the first time working with session variables on a server. Required a little bit of legwork writing those extension methods, but that's going to help us to maintain state. All of that then allows us to write the same get method. So I can take those cart items, this line 29, and now I'm going to paste that line here in my view cart. And let's now put our breakpoints back in, and now we should be able to maintain state across these different methods. Oh, this refactors one more thing. This becomes the local cart items. Which kind of begs the question, do we need underscore cart items? I might be able to refactor this code a little simpler, but nonetheless, breakpoint there. Let's run the application in its current state. And see that it's spinning. There it is. Details, add to cart, continue. Let's step over that. So now cart items is able to get our bicycle. I did notice that the ID was missing there, which we can fix if that's necessary. Quantity of 1. Cart view model. Let's take a look at our cart view model. Kind of going back to here, we've got one cart item. We've got a total price. We don't have a total quantity. We're not using that. And we're sending that into the view. Now our view isn't using that cart view model, but you did see the bicycles in there, so let's flush out our view cart view. So here's our shopping cart view cart. And let's do a table, class of table, T head, brand, model, price, quantity, subtotal. I'm gonna have an empty heading there. Close the row, close the head. Let's open up the T body. And in the body, we're gonna loop through our cart items in our model and spit out. This is pretty close. But there is no product. There is an item.bicycle. Let's spit out the bicycle brand, the bicycle model, the bicycle price, the quantity, and the item bicycle price times the item quantity. And what we can do on this little inline razor block, we can say, okay, convert that to a string in currency, and put another set of curlies here. And then we got to close that there. Okay, so that's getting the cart items out of our view model, and there's a total model dot total price. Okay, let's see what breaks. Now, also notice I'm going to refactor this anchor tag to remove an item. That's clearly not something we have, and it's still not. I got still a product somewhere. Where do I have product? I'm going to take this line out because I'm going to refactor that anyways. Again, take a look at the shopping cart view model. You can see it's a list of cart items along with the total price and a total quantity. And so that you know that what we're looping through and what we're displaying is a list of cart items. And details and add to cart. We're getting somewhere. Now if I go details, add to cart, okay, we're all, clearly that's not working the way intended, but it is getting some features here. Nice, total's looking good. Clearly we got to get the same quantity going up. I thought we had that logic in there, but it's not. Okay, so pretty cool. You know, I might create another link up here to your shopping cart link so that we can get there another way. Let's troubleshoot the problem that we're currently having, which is when you add the same bicycle twice. And again, sessions are reset when you close the session to the server, and so new browser tab, new session. But I go back and add that guy again. Okay, well, this is good. We're almost there. Let's fix that problem. Right, shopping cart controller. Okay, so this should be existing cart underscore cart items. Okay. Let's read that from cart items here instead. If we change that to the cart items out of the session, that ought to fix it. That might be it. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, and we are well on our way to a shopping cart. Let's maybe just have a little link to view the cart, like if you want to go here and then you want to go back to view your cart. And so our nav bar, take the breakpoint out. Our nav bar is in the view shared layout. So that's the parent. If I go to user layout, that's the child. And here you could see we've got a nav bar with an unordered list, and currently we've got this MS margin start auto on our last link. Gonna have to refactor that just a little bit. Okay, I'm actually gonna close my list here. And because this UL is set to flex grow, I'm gonna make another div here, and it's gonna be a flex box. So we're gonna say deflex. And because this is set to flex grow of 1, it's going to take up all the space, and then these two links inside of this div will be on the right hand side, so we actually don't need the class of MS Auto anymore. And we'll go ahead and put another UL here, class of navbar nav. And one will be to our admin area, but let's make another LI here. Nav item. ASP area, this is kind of in the home, this is in the root, so you can just have an empty string for the ASP area. ASP controller will be shopping cart. ASP action should be view cart. The text will say cart, and save it. So that should format the link on the right hand side of our nav bar, admin area, or just cart, shopping cart, view cart. And if I go bicycles, details, add, bicycles, details, add, then I go home and I go back to view cart. Awesome. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is enable someone to remove something from your cart. Of course, you know, people who are selling stuff don't want you to remove something from their cart, but you got to provide that feature. So what we can do here is on each row, we can add a little button to remove an item. And so let's go out of our layout. Let's go back to our view cart inside of bicycle lists, shopping cart. There we go. View cart. And so here I took that link out. I'm going to write a method to do this, which is going to be my shopping cart controller to remove item. You're going to have to give it a route ID. And that is going to be, now our model has oh, wait a minute. So we're looping through our model and we have an item ID here. Item ID, bicycle ID. And we also want to make sure to store that in the hidden field. This will be a class of button danger. It says remove. So we have to write this method. And we also want to store the hidden field. So inputs type of hidden. Okay, so that allows us to send that to a remove item method. So let's write that method inside of controller. Bicycle controller. I don't think at any point we're using this index method. Oh, wait a minute. we need to go back to the cart. Wrong place. Shopping cart controller. I'm going to write a method called remove item. Take that breakpoint out. Public iAction results. We called it remove item. Int ID. Now my Copilot's really picking up on a lot. It's picking up that I've got cart items inside of a session. Let's tab this in and fix potential problems. Okay, cart items. Okay. Okay, I'm going to call this item to remove. So we read our cart items out of session. We look up an item to remove by its ID. I want to make sure that that ID is coming in. If item to remove is not null, and say if item to remove's quantity is greater than 1, then we just decrement the quantity. Otherwise, we remove it completely. Right, so you could have multiple bikes, and so if you just click the remove one button once, you're just removing one. From the cart items. Cart items has a quantity, and so you're decrementing 1 here, but if the quantity is not greater than 1, it's 1, then it'll just completely remove it. And then we reset the cart with the cart items, and then redirect to the view cart method. So I had to refactor that a little bit to take into account our quantity. And let's see how that works. Add the same bike. We've got 2. If we remove it once, it goes down to 1. Remove it again, and it goes away. Very cool. Okay, back to a couple of learning objectives. We have now, used a view model. Again, to kind of highlight that, our view model is in the models folder, and it includes a list of cart items, a total price, and a total quantity. Again, that's not being pulled from any one model in the database. So this is a specific model for a specific view, a specific page on your website. We've maintained session data on the server using HTTP context, not content like I had a typo, to kind of remember information about state, about a user on the server. We're going to use temp data to transfer data from controller to controller. And so temp data is exactly what it sounds like. It is a property that you can put data in, and it stays there until it's read. And so it's kind of a storage, it's a variable that kind of just stays in there temporarily, stays in the server memory temporarily, just until it's read. And there are different properties that allow you to kind of work with temp data, different methods to, maybe persist that data longer than it is set to default. But let's use temp data in our add to cart. And so here's add to cart, and kind of towards the bottom, I'm going to make this temp data. And again, this is a property that's used to just kind of put some data in it and then read data out of it. And I'll say cart message. Again, this is a dictionary, so you can see it's kind of using this array syntax. And whatever we want to put in there, we could say the bicycle has been added to the cart. And this is bicycle to add dot brand. And then bicycle to add dot model. So this will say, brand and model added to cart. And so you can kind of see we're loading up this temp data in add to cart, and that's when we do that. Now you could see it then goes to view cart. And so in view cart, we'll go down here and I'll load up the temp data into my view bag. View bag dot cart message. So we'll go ahead and put this message ultimately into view bag. And that will allow us to, in our view, inspect this cart message. So we're in our shopping cart, view cart. And basically, if there's a cart message, display it. So underneath my shopping cart, I'll do a little H2. Text, so green text and a BG of dark. That will load up the view bag cart message. Capital M. So this heading will display this cart message if there is one, obviously. If there's not, it should ignore it. So if I go to cart, you could see it's not there. But if I go bicycles, details, add, it says Trek FX1 added to cart. I got an extra $sign in there. But here is my temp data. Now if I go back to bicycles cart, it's not there. So you can see the data is just kind of there for a success message. It's temp, thus the temp data. And you can kind of see how it's being used to send a message from one method in a controller to another method in a controller. So here it's being read. So this is reading temp data. And in this method, we are writing temp data. And once it's read, once this line executes, the storage is out of scope. The data is no longer saved. Okay, we'll do one more example of temp data, and it's the same kind of thing. In that when we remove an item, which also redirects to view cart, we'll put a different message inside of cart message. And so that dollar sign needs to go away. And here, let's copy that line of code and change our temp data cart message, and we'll just say that the whatever, removed from cart. And so the question is, do we have a bicycle actually in scope at that point? And maybe we write this a little bit differently. Item to remove dot bicycle dot brand model really, you could probably just take it outside of this. Take that whole message out and put it in right here. And so here you're writing the temp data and redirecting to view cart, at which point we read the cart message out right here, and it should work the same way. Bicycles, details, add, and there you go. Didn't have a picture on that one, but if you remove one, voila. Okay, the last thing I'd like to do on this particular version is actually make a purchase and save a purchase to a database. And so that's what I don't have, is I don't have a model for a purchase. And so to mock this up, we'll go ahead in our models, we'll create a new class called purchase, and it will have a purchase ID. It will have a product ID, like a bicycle ID. Bicycle ID. So it'll have that relationship to the bicycle table. This is a foreign key, and this is a navigation property should we need it. We'll have a quantity. And a date time. We'll make quantity nullable. So for each cart item, we're going to purchase each item individually, is the way that this will work out. And so I think it does make sense to have a user ID. We haven't brought in users yet, so we're not going to tie in a user ID, but we can bring in a price or a total, right, for the purchase total. And so we'll just call it total. Okay. So that'll be our purchase model. And then we need to make a table inside of our shop context. And so let's go into shop context and public DB set of purchase called purchases. Because we're adding this to the database, we're going to want to go ahead and add a migration to enable this. So let's do add migration added purchases. I'll just call it added purchases. Let's see. Okay, create table. It did kind of delete some data out of my database for the bicycles that I actually tried to take out beforehand. So that's fine, because those seed data, I meant to delete that anyways. Here's creating my table called purchases. Let's go ahead now, back in my package manager, update database. Very good. So we now have a purchase table in our database. And so let's go back to our shopping cart controller and let's kind of collapse these methods. Okay, so there's our controller. Let's add a method here. Public iAction results called, checkout. Or how about purchase items? Let's get our cart items out of session. And for each over our cart items, var item in cart items, save each item as a purchase. Let's see, context, purchases, add, new purchase, bicycle ID, purchase date. Let's save the total price. I think we just called it total. What else do we have in our purchases? So we got bicycle ID, quantity, purchase date. Let's see what I'm forgetting here. And our models for purchases. Okay, that'll be auto-generated. Bicycle ID, we've got quantity. Purchase date and total. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So context, purchases table, add a new purchase, and then we need to do save changes. Save changes to the database, which is context save changes, and then we can remove the cart to an empty list, and all that just to return to our home page. And so I do want to do this on a post just to kind of show that PRG pattern that I talked about. HTTP post. And oh, I need to do this outside of my for each. All of that needs to be outside of my for each. And you can see this is a post redirecting to a get. So PRG, pretty simple to code it. So our method is called purchase items. And so in our view cart, we just need a purchase button inside of a form. Let's see where this might make sense. So if I go bicycles, details, add, bicycles, details, add. Underneath my table, yeah, it just makes sense. A little buy button underneath. Kind of seems silly to do a form tag action as post. ASP action is called purchase items. Button, class of success, purchase. Kind of seems silly to have a form, but that's okay. So let's put a breakpoint in there and see if I click that I should get to that post. And if I get to the post, I'll just continue. Close, close. Not sure what happened there. Let me troubleshoot. We're almost there. Okay, I think Visual Studio was having a moment. Everything's fine. Didn't fix anything. Let's click details. Let's click add to cart. Okay, it's not happy about my total price to string at the moment. Cannot override the action attribute. Okay, so that was on. It's interesting when you do one thing, it's like if it affects some other complete total part of the program. So let's pause. Okay, it is barking at me about the code I just wrote inside of my shopping cart, view cart. It might not be liking this form tag. So let's just take that form tag out. And I might wire this up differently because it is the view cart that's breaking. Okay, so I got my view. Okay, so that was the problem. So now I just have to figure out how to wire up this button to that method without a post. I wanted it to be a post, that's why I put a form on it. So let's just try and do ASP action This is in my cart controller. We called it purchase items. Inside of the shopping cart controller, let's just see if we hit that breakpoint now. I just had to code that a little bit differently. Let me close it down, try again. Doing the same thing it just was. That's the second time it did that to me, where localhost was having an issue, but there was nothing to solve. Okay, details. Add to cart. Purchase. And I can see here that my purchase button is not giving me any indicators of where it's going, so not quite. Okay, I'm not quite sure, but to get this working, something I've done a few times now, even in this video, I had to take the post off of the purchase items method, and then I just refactored this into an anchor tag instead of a button. That the button would do a post, the anchor tag just navigates you. And now I'm able to hit my breakpoint, and so we are back up and running, and we are almost purchasing items. And so if I go to bicycles, and I go to details, and I go to add to cart, and now I click on purchase, I hit my breakpoint. Let's hop over my cart items. There's one for each item in cart items. We're going to add a new purchase with the bicycle ID of 1, a quantity of 1, today's date and time, a quantity times a price. And so let's step over that. Save changes to the database. And I'm just going to hit continue. It redirected me to home. Let's close, stop debugging, refresh my database. We have a purchases table. And we have a purchase ID, a bicycle ID, a quantity, and a total. All right, we have made a purchase with our shopping cart. Thank you for holding in there. I realize there's a few, bumps along the way to get our shopping cart implemented. However, we do now have a shopping cart where we can make purchases and save that purchase information to a database.